Hi everyone. For a while now I've had the Shelf Queen literally sat on the shelf, and I was lucky enough yesterday to get it out to Redwood Scale Trail. You can look at one of my previous videos and you'll see it's a pretty amazing place, to be honest. Super scale, loads of detail, and it's going to be opening up soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But one of the things I wanted to do for ages is to replace this chrome plastic bumper that came with the Shelf Queen. It's done really well. It's taken a few knocks, as you can see, a couple of cracks in it, but it is plastic, and I've not been able to put any sort of recovery eyes or anything like that on it. And being a truck as well, I want to be able to put like an A-frame bar on it as well to sort of protect the front grille. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. It might interest you, it might not. If it does, then please follow along. There's going to be lots of metal work, a bit of silver soldering and stuff like that, so you might be able to pick up a few tricks on the way. So let me show you the truck, and then I can show you what I'm after doing. So here she is. This is the Shelf Queen. Not so much a Shelf Queen now, so I suppose I better come up with a better name really. But so before we had a series of lights and the bumper. I like the look, I like the shape of the bumper too, but it obviously isn't very tough. And it does hang down a bit excessively as well, so I think I'm going to probably bring that line up a little bit. And then create like an A-bar to cover the front grille. So yeah, that's it. I've got a couple of really good mounting points here at the front of the chassis, and I can always take this off and drill a couple more if I need to. So let's get cracking. The material I'm going to use is this steel bar. It's 2mm thick, so it gives me something to be able to silver solder to. It's 25mm deep as well. So it's very close to the original. So I think what I'm going to do, I like this profile at the top, this sort of step, so I'll probably try and recreate that, and I'll be able to put a couple of recovery eyes in it as well, which is obviously quite important for a truck of this size. So first of all, we're going to be marking out our length. Because we're putting a couple of bends in it, you want to make it a couple of millimeters longer either way, because when you put the bend in it, it's going to take a little bit of length out of it. Not a huge amount, but again, the width of this bumper is pretty good, so I'm going to leave it as it was originally. So if we measure out the old bumper, we've got about 175mm there. So I think what we'll do is we'll keep it at 175 and we'll just lose a couple of mil either side. It won't be too much of a problem there. So get our material. I like to use Sharpies, the fine tipped ones, just because generally on most materials they're pretty easy to read once you've marked them out. So we'll mark out 175, get our small square, make a mark, and then we'll just hacksaw this off. And just because I can, I'm going to square the ends up in the milling machine. I like to get everything right at the first stage, and then that way, as the build progresses, I know that everything's going to be nice and square. All my measurements that I take are going to be accurate, and ultimately it looks better in the end result. Just lower the cutter just below the work, lock up the up and down, get some light on the subject. So I feed the work in till it just touches. Go a little bit more, and then the lock under here, and it locks that axis, so I just get a better cut. Okay, so that's cut the whole face that side. So we'll stop it, turn it around, and then clean up the other end. Okay, so the next step is we're going to mark a few bits out. So what I do, I use one of these wide blue Sharpies and just colour it in, and then that way when I scribe my lines I can see them clearly. So what we do, we use this vernier. This is a sacrificial vernier, by the way. It's not one of my accurate ones that I use for my machining. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rough measurement here. So we're about 36 mil, something like that. So if we say 36 mil, we'll get that up on the vernier. And then because we've obviously cleaned our ends up, we know that when we scribe the line, it's going to be accurate. And because it's in relation to either end as opposed to from the centre, it's going to be the same. So we just mark the other end as well. And I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but we've got both our lines, so we know where to do our bends. So just off camera, I've marked up where the holes are going to be as well for mounting it, and I'm just going to put a small pilot through those. Go, and then I'll open them up to the mounting size. So I'm going to use M3, so I'm going to open them up to M3.5 just to give me a little bit of adjustment. And then we have our mounting hole done. Okay, so now I want to do this cut off corner here. So what I'll do, I'll get a rough measurement of this distance here, and the distance from here to here, mark them on here, and then we'll just trim that off with a hacksaw, and then we can clean that up with a file. So I'm just going to mark it again in the area where I'm going to mark it up to cut it, and that'll just make it easier for me to see. And again, because we've squared everything up nicely, everything we do one end, we can do exactly the same the other end. We'll just clean this up with a file. You might be tempted with a file to try and speed it up to go forwards and backwards. You shouldn't do that. Two reasons: one, it'll blunt your files, and two, when you file, if you file in one motion, you'll get one flat face. If you do it rocking backwards and forwards, you'll end up with the edges tapered, and then you'll forever be trying to file it flat. So just get in the habit, just file one way. So I've got a line on there that I'm going to, and do a little bit at a time. And use the full length of the file. Don't sit there going like this. You just won't end up with a good finish. There we go. So we're pretty much on the line there. I'm happy with that. Move on to the next step. So next bit is we want to put the bends on the ends, and we could do this two ways. We could use a conventional vise, but on these the jaws, they're not really designed for accuracy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it in the milling machine vise, because the milling machine vise is a lot more accurate and it's got nice square jaws. So when I put this up to my line, I can also use a square on the jaws like this, and I can ensure that it sits nice and square inside the jaws. and I'll just offer the square up to it before I nip it up. So I'll just check that one more time. So I'm lining up my marked line, but I'm also trying to get it square in the vise. There we go. I could also use another great engineering device called a 1-2-3 block. It's called a 1-2-3 block because it's 1 inch thick, it's 2 inches wide, and it's 3 inches long. And they're really useful for any engineering things like clamping and stuff like that. I use them a lot when I'm doing my silver soldering, because they've got bolt holes in them as well, so I can use a washer on there and I can clamp stuff down. But I could also sit that on the vise and then I could get it square that way. Right, so to make the bend, I'm not going to use heat. The reason I don't use heat is because the metal's not that thick, and also if you heat it up and you get it to where you want it, by the time it's cooled down it would have moved again, so your measurement won't necessarily be accurate. So I do everything cold as far as I can. The only thing I do heat things up is if I'm doing round rod and I'm trying to bend a really tight, like almost like a loop into it, then I will heat it up. But other than that, I tend not to bother. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to put my fingers on here, apply some pressure, give it a bit of a push, gauge how far we're going just using the square, and then we can compare it to the original as well, get a rough idea of how far we're bending. So if I hold that up parallel on there, I can see we need to go a little bit more. Again, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to be close enough for what I want. So let me just move the camera and I'll show you exactly what I've done there. Hope you can see what I'm trying to show you here. So to get the angle right in comparison to this angle, what I've done, I'm sitting the angled piece up against the bumper that I've made, and then I'm just using the square to square it up against the front of the bumper, which obviously will sit square. Now that looks a tiny bit out, but I'm happy with that. As long as both sides are the same, I'm going to stick with it. So doing the same again, just applying the pressure. Offer up our old bumper, and you know what, I think that's pretty bang on. So just putting it on the surface plate. It's called a surface plate because it's dead flat. It's just a cast iron plate that's been machined flat on the top. I use it for marking stuff out, but it's also a nice hard surface for sitting stuff on when I'm silver soldering. I just put it on that heat proof mat that's at the back, and then I know it's not going to move. So what I've done, I'm just offering this up on the surface plate. The ends are touching nicely so it's not twisted, and I'm just comparing the height here with the height here, and by eye it looks perfect, so I'm going to say that's good enough. So there we go, just mounting it on just temporarily. I think so far I'm pretty pleased with that. Just looking by eye, it looks nice and symmetrical both sides and at the ends as well. So previously I had this light bar on here, which I love. I think it just sets it off nicely. So what I need to do is to put a flat piece on the back here, and that will serve two purposes. So that will be so I can mount these lights back on, but also so I can make the A bar for the grille. So next I want to make a step for the top, and also this will be the bracket for the lights and for the mounting the A bar. So all I've done is I've just sat it on a smaller bit of bar, marked it out, and I'll cut and file that until it fits, and then I'll silver solder it on. Okay, so we've filed and fettled this piece and it fits in there nicely, as you can see there. So what we'll do, we'll just put a slight bevel on the edges. I'm going to chuck this in the shot blaster just to clean it up, and then we'll get it silver soldered together. So I'm going to show you a demonstration of the silver soldering. I do have some videos already specifically on it, but it's quite interesting to see how it goes and see how the solder flows, etc. So I'll see if it works. Hopefully it will. Key things are, you need to heat both bits at the same rate. You need flux, which is on there now, which cleans and also helps the solder to flow. And then you need to feed the solder in very, very gently. Okay, so hopefully you agree, it's looking pretty cool so far. Got the top ridge on there, it's all silver soldered. So we'll mount that up temporarily, and then we can take some measurements for our A-bar. Okay, this is where we're at so far. So we've got the bumper mounted. Really happy with it so far. I've got the plate on the top mounted as well, which is silver soldered on. So now I need to decide on the design I'm going to have. Now I did have a thought of like a flat plate in like an arc with some vertical bars, but I like the Mack logo. I'd like that showing. So I'm gonna have a bit of a Google, come up with a couple of ideas, and then we'll crack on. Okay, so back in the milling machine, excuse the noise, doing the drilling of the holes for the spotlights. So I've worked out the centre, I've worked out the distance from the centres. Basically the centres between the lamps is 25mm. That's going to give me a little bit of clearance. So I'm using the DRO. So I've drilled the first hole. So now if I move that 25mm exactly to the next hole, excuse the wiggling, I'm winding at the same time. So we go. Keep going. 25mm, there we go. So that'll bring me over the next hole. So drill that one, move it another 25, drill that one, move it another 25, and then that's the 4 holes from the spotlights done. So we're just swapping over to a 1.6mm drill to do the second row, because the lamps have got like a locating pin. So we're just going to drill those, and the good thing is we're using a DRO. We just go back to all the points, drill the hole, and they'll be in exactly the right place. So there we go. So we've got all the holes drilled for the spotlights, all nice and accurate. Okay, so I got it mounted on with the spotlights. I have to say, I'm really happy with that so far. I just need to decide what A-frame I'm going to use. Just going to square that up a little bit actually. Just noticed it's a little bit crooked. So I made the holes a little bit bigger just because it is a body mounted on a chassis, so there could potentially be a little bit of variation in it. This is a Brooder toy, if anyone's interested. Brooder Mack Granite, they're generally called. So I've managed to get it to fit onto a sort of a universal AliExpress chassis, which is quite good because it means that everything's easy to fit. And now we need to decide what we're going to do with an A-frame. Right, so a bit more progress. Started off with some flat bar like this, and I've marked out roughly what I want. So the idea is the bumper's going to sit here like this, and this bull bar will sit up, and then these will be spaced out, and in between them there'll be bars, so hence bull bar. So what I've done, I in the milling machine just milled off this flat here, just because this is the width of the bumper, but I want the bars to protrude forward, if that makes sense. and then I've drilled it, and using a slot drill I have tidied the holes up. So the bar that I'm using is this 6mm OD hydraulic pipe, and that will, once it's deburred, fit perfectly into there, and then I can make my crossbars. So a bit more silver soldering to do. I've got it all set up in these with the 1, 2, 3 blocks and the V blocks, because I want to keep it nice and square. So in order to make it square once I've soldered it, I need to hold it square, if that makes sense. So I won't show again what I'm doing with the silver soldering, because I've shown that already, but you'll get the gist of that. Okay, so just give you a quick view of the bumper so far. I'm just about to stick the bull bar to the bumper itself. It's a bit of a tense moment, so I won't film this bit because there might be a few choice words, but I'll let you know what it's like when it's done. Well, that's it. It's all done and fitted. I'm really happy with it. I love how the lights are equally spaced, and I'm sure that these bars are going to protect it nicely. I've put some of my rotating recovery eyes in that I make. Just need to get one more shackle, and hopefully you guys think it looks the part as well. It's been a really fun project, practical as well, and I think we'll call that it. Just think of a colour maybe. Might even leave it as it is. I quite like it, quite rustic like that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for following, and I hope you follow me on the next modification, which will probably be down the back end.